Are your characters funny? Do they know how to tell a joke? Are they capable of making your readers laugh? Do they have a funny bone? If you are writing characters and you want them to be humorous, you want them to be able to interject humor into your story and your storytelling, and you're not sure how to do it, well, according to How to Write a Romance and Get It Published and How to Write a Romance for the New Market, there are ways that you can learn to create humor in your storytelling, that you can cultivate an air and a means of telling a humorous story. And these are some of the ways. Take a moment and think about your favorite romantic comedy movies. Make a list, decide on the ones that best suit the story that you are trying to tell, and watch them. For me, I have favorites. When Harry Met Sally, that one I truly enjoy. And I love the back and forth between Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. And the universal question of whether men and women could be friends, or whether once you slept with the opposite sex, it ruined the friendship. Do you have an opinion on this subject? Can men and women be friends, or does the sex spoil everything? Leave a comment below and let me know. Another romantic comedy favorite is Moonstruck, starring Cher and Nick Cage. In this movie, Cher is a widow who is living with her Italian-American family in Brooklyn Heights. She is supposed to remarry, but somehow she falls for her fiance's brother, who seems to be totally wrong for her. Have you seen While You Were Sleeping, starring Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman? Or what about The Apartment, which is a 1960s classic? Or perhaps you have seen Love and Basketball, which is a 2000 film, and it's a romantic comedy. These are all movies that you can watch and you can study. You can pay attention to the dialogue. You can pay attention to the physical comedy. You can pay attention to the lead up to the comedy. There are so many things that you can learn by watching films and taking notes that will help you in writing your romantic comedy. Before we leave the subject of rom-com films, I want to mention Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle, as well as How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, starring Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey. These are just a few films that will help you in your research and will allow you to transfer what you have learned from the big screen onto your laptop computer. Now let's dive into the writing part of this video. According to How to Write a Romance for the New Market and Get It Published, there is a chapter entitled Use Humor to Mind Those Emotions, which was written by Millie Criswell, who is the author of over 25 romance novels. And you might find this interesting. After being an avid romance reader for decades, after her 40th birthday, she became a romance writer. That's very interesting. But that is also the way of a lot of romance writers. They were once readers and then they became writers. According to Millie Criswell, injecting humor into your writing is tricky. There's a subtlety involved so that the result is not slapstick comedy, the type the Three Stooges used so effectively. Instead, the result should be believable situations that amuse, that leave us smiling or chuckling with delight. The easiest way to add humor to your novel is to give your hero and heroine opposite character traits. Opposite not only attracts, they make for rather funny moments. Remember Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew? If your hero is obsessively neat and your heroine has always been a slob, or your heroine is a stiff-necked spinster who abhors laziness and alcohol, and your hero's a womanizing drifter who likes to imbibe, you're going to have humorous situations right from the first meeting. Millie Criswell goes on to say, In my novel, Primrose, farm girl Rose Elizabeth Martin earned her living by the sweat of her brow. Alexander Warwick was a cultured, privileged English duke. Their widely diverse backgrounds made for some truly memorable and humorous moments. Setting up embarrassing situations for your hero and heroine to overcome is a great way to interject humor into the story. If your hero has never milked a cow or castrated a pig, you instantly got the perfect vehicle to illustrate his ineptness. The same is true if your heroine has few social graces and must learn them overnight, or if she is a terrible cook and has to host an important dinner party for 12. Perhaps she's a witch, but is awful at performing incantations, as in the delightful heroine in Jill Barnett's Bewitching. Sprinkle large doses of humor in the dialogue. A character's wry wit shines through in the words he or she uses. Keep in mind, a little bit of humor goes a long way in dialogue, and even humor can get tedious if used in overabundance. If you can't tell a joke without ruining the punchline, think you're not a particularly funny person, and are worried that you can't write humor, don't despair. There are plenty of things you can do to learn. Read authors who are particularly good at writing humor. Study their scenes, dialogue, and note what makes them work. View romantic comedies. Some of the best situations and dialogues have been filmed for the silver screen. Study some of the memorable ones, such as Steel Magnolia, excellent dialogue. When Harry Met Sally, witty repertoire. Sleepless in Seattle, wry humor. It Happened One Night, and many of the classic Katharine Hepburn / Spencer Tracy movies, which are wonderful examples of witty repertoire. In my novel, The Temporary Mistress, which stars a heroine who is a comedian. She's a struggling comedian. She's trying to break through in the entertainment world. She falls for an infectious disease doctor. When I had to do her research, I went to the library and I did research on comedians. I looked up Red Fox. I looked up other female comedians so that I could try to capture the spirit and the essence of a comedian, and trying to see how they came up with their jokes or their skits or their performances. So for me, even though I knew nothing about the life of a comedian, I had to do my research. And I even wrote jokes, trying to be in the mind or get in the mindset of my heroine. So there are things, as this author says, that you can do if you're not organically funny. I also went to YouTube and watched hours and hours of stand-up comedy so that I could get the feel of the characters, so that I could pretend or imagine them walking across the stage, holding the microphone, things like that. So that research helped me with the particular story that I was telling. In conclusion, the author states that life would be pretty dull if the people we encountered didn't have a sense of humor, didn't know how to laugh, and didn't think things in life were funny. Same thing applies to the characters in your book. They need to have a sense of humor. They need to see the funny side of life in order to be believable and in order to be relatable. Of course, people express humor in different ways, and the same should be said about your characters. Some characters could have a wry sense of humor. Some characters could be cynical. Some characters could even have slapstick comedy or physical comedy. It is up to you to decide how to express the humor in your story and whether the type of humor you are using is applicable to the story that you are currently telling. I've also found that in writing humor, sometimes it comes out natural.